It was a sunny Saturday afternoon when I stumbled upon the truth that shattered my world. I had just returned home from running errands, a couple of grocery bags slung over my shoulder, when I noticed my wife, Mia, was not in the living room where I expected her to be. The house was unusually quiet, and an unsettling feeling crept over me. I called out her name, but only silence answered. I decided to check our bedroom, half expecting to find her absorbed in a book or napping. Instead, I found her phone lying on the bedside table, buzzing with notifications. A new message popped up on the screen. "Can't wait to see you perform tonight. You're amazing." My heart dropped. I shouldn't have looked, but my curiosity got the better of me. I picked up the phone, opened the message thread, and my worst fears were confirmed. The name Leo was repeated in messages filled with flirty emojis and promises of meeting up. I felt as if I had been punched in the gut. The world around me faded, and all I could hear was the pounding of my heart. My thoughts raced, trying to make sense of it all. Leo, a street performer. I had seen him a few times juggling and performing tricks in the park, a crowd of admirers always around him. I had thought he was just a talented guy trying to make a living, not a homewrecker. The anger surged within me, hot and consuming. How could she do this? How could she betray me with someone like him? My mind flashed back to moments with Mia, our laughter, the way she looked at me, the promises we made. It all felt like a cruel joke now. I dropped the phone, the sound of it hitting the floor echoing in the silence of the room. I needed to think to process this betrayal. I took a deep breath and stepped outside. The sunlight felt different, almost mocking. I walked towards the park where I had seen Leo perform, my heart racing not just with anger but with a sense of purpose. I needed to confront this reality, to understand the magnitude of what had happened. As I reached the park, I saw him there, juggling brightly colored balls, his smile infectious as a crowd gathered around him. I stood at the edge of the crowd, watching as he entertained everyone, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. The laughter, the applause, it all felt like a personal affront to my pain. I wanted to scream, to expose him right there in front of everyone, but instead I felt something else rising within me, a desire for revenge. The thought of Mia's betrayal consumed my every waking moment. How could I let this go unpunished? I had to do something. I needed to make him pay for what he had done to me, to us. I envisioned a plan, one that would not only sabotage his performances but also expose his true character. I would make sure everyone knew what kind of man he really was. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the park, I turned away from the scene, my heart still heavy but now ignited with a new determination. I would not let this man take away my happiness. I would take control of this situation, and in doing so, reclaim my dignity and my marriage. The next steps would not be easy, but I was ready to dive into the darkness of revenge. I would need patience, cunning, and a little bit of luck. But one thing was certain. I was not going to let Mia's betrayal go unaddressed. I would make sure that Leo's tricks backfired spectacularly. Before all this turmoil, my life with Mia had seemed picture perfect. We were married for 5 years, and in many ways, we were that couple everyone admired. The ones who laughed together, supported each other, and shared a life filled with dreams and plans. I remember how we met at a mutual friend's party, her laughter like music that drew me in. We bonded over our love for travel and adventure, our late-night talks stretching into the early hours as we shared our hopes and fears. But looking back now, I realized there were signs I had overlooked, small cracks in the facade that I had been too blind to see. Mia had always been somewhat of a free spirit, someone who thrived in social situations and loved the thrill of new experiences. I admired that about her, but I also wondered if it sometimes led her to seek validation from others. There had been late nights out with friends that left me feeling uneasy, and I often brushed those feelings aside, convincing myself that trust was the foundation of our relationship. There were moments, too, when I sensed a distance between us. The late-night phone calls and the occasional secretive text messages. I had questioned her about them, but she always reassured me with a warm smile and a gentle touch, telling me that I was being paranoid. I wanted to believe her, to trust her completely, but in my gut, I felt a nagging sense of doubt. Yet I pushed those feelings down, choosing instead to focus on the good moments. The spontaneous weekend trips, the quiet nights in, the way she would curl up next to me on the couch. But now those memories felt tainted. I could see how easy it was for her to slip into an affair with someone like Leo. He was charming, charismatic, and had an aura of excitement that was hard to resist. As I replayed moments from our relationship, I realized I had been living in a bubble, thinking that our love was invulnerable. I had taken our bond for granted, assuming it would withstand any storm. I had no idea it was so fragile. In the days following my discovery, I found myself spiraling. I became obsessed with the idea of Leo, the street performer who had stolen my wife. I felt a strange mix of anger and inadequacy. What did he have that I did? Why was he able to capture Mia's attention so easily? I thought about his performances, the way he captivated audiences with his tricks and charm. It ate at me, gnawing away at my self-esteem, making me question everything about myself. I often found myself wandering the park where he performed, a dark cloud hanging over me. I would watch him juggle, his movements fluid and practiced, and I couldn't help but feel a growing hatred for him. It was infuriating to see him laugh and enjoy life while I was in the depths of despair. I wanted to confront him, to yell at him, to shake him by the shoulders and demand to know how he could do this to me. But I held back, knowing that I needed to be strategic. Confrontation wouldn't bring me the satisfaction I craved. Instead, I needed to dismantle his world piece by piece. I began to think of my plan more seriously. If I was going to sabotage Leo's performances, I had to do it in a way that was clever and effective. I wanted to expose him and make Mia realize the kind of man she had chosen over me. I imagined scenarios where his tricks would go wrong, where he would falter in front of an audience. The thought of it filled me with a dark sense of glee. I would make sure he paid for his betrayal, just as I was paying for mine. But as I plotted, I also felt a pang of guilt. Was I really the victim here, or was I just as complicit in the deterioration of my marriage by not addressing my doubts sooner? I wrestled with the idea of revenge, knowing it could consume me if I let it, but I pushed those thoughts aside. I had made my choice. I was going to take action. The deeper I delved into my plan, the more I felt my emotions shift. Anger morphed into something darker, something that felt intoxicating. I found myself smiling at the thought of Leo's impending downfall, of watching him fail in front of the very people who admired him. I could almost taste the satisfaction that would come from exposing him, from turning Mia's gaze away from him and back to me. I was ready to execute my plan. I would not be the man who stood by and allowed his life to be destroyed by a street performer. I was going to reclaim my power. The days turned into a blur as I crafted my plan. Every waking moment was consumed by thoughts of revenge against Leo, the man who had intruded upon my life and shattered my marriage. I felt like a puppet master, pulling strings from the shadows, and the thrill of it all ignited a fire within me. I had never envisioned myself as a vengeful person, but the sting of betrayal had transformed me into someone I barely recognized. I sat in my living room one evening, the glow of the television illuminating the dark corners of the room. Mia was out again, likely with her friends, and I took the opportunity to think more deeply about my motivations. What was it that drove me to this point? Was it merely anger, or was there something deeper, something primal that demanded satisfaction for the pain I had endured? As I reflected, I began to understand that my feelings were rooted in a deep sense of betrayal and loss. It wasn't just about Mia's infidelity. It was about the life we had built together, the dreams we had shared. I felt like a fool for trusting her so completely, for believing that our love was immune to the temptations of the world. I had invested so much emotionally, and now I was left with nothing but the wreckage of my heart. The thought of Leo brought forth a surge of rage. He had no idea what he was doing to me. He was just a street performer, a man who juggled balls and entertained passers-by, yet he had managed to capture the heart of my wife. As I imagined his smug smile, the way he'd effortlessly charm an audience, I felt a primal urge to strip away that facade. I wanted to expose him, to show everyone that he was nothing but a fraud, a man who preyed on the vulnerabilities of others. But revenge was not just about hurting him. It was also about reclaiming my own sense of worth. I felt so powerless in the face of my wife. Betrayal, and I needed to regain control. By sabotaging Leo, I could assert my dominance over the situation. It would be a way to tell Mia that I would not stand idly by while someone else took what was rightfully mine. I wanted her to see the consequences of her actions, to understand that her choices had repercussions beyond just her own heart. As I mapped out my plan, I envisioned various scenarios where I could undermine Leo's performances. I thought about the times I had watched him, how he captivated audiences with his tricks. There was something about his style that made it seem effortless, and I knew that I would have to be strategic in my approach. I didn't want to just ruin his act. I wanted to make it clear that he was a fraud. I began to gather information about him. I learned his routine, the tricks he performed, and the times he usually set up in the park. The more I watched, the more I understood that his charm was not just in his tricks, it was in the way he interacted with people. He had a natural charisma that drew them in, and I realized that this was what I needed to exploit. But as I plotted, I also felt the weight of morality pressing down on me. Was I really justified in my actions? I had always prided myself on being a good person, someone who valued honesty and integrity. Now I was teetering on the edge of something darker. I wrestled with the implications of my revenge. Would it truly bring me peace, or would it only deepen my own suffering? I dismissed those thoughts as weakness. I was in too deep now. There was no turning back. I had witnessed the depths of betrayal, and I would not allow myself to be a victim any longer. I would become the architect of my own fate, and if that meant becoming someone I had never intended to be, then so be it. My resolve hardened as I set my plan into motion. I would work to sabotage Leo's performances, to expose him in front of the very people who adored him. I imagined the satisfaction I would feel when the crowd turned against him, when they realized that he was nothing more than a street magician with no real magic to offer. And as I plotted, I also felt a sense of exhilaration. This was my moment to reclaim my power, to take control of my life once more. I would not be defined by Mia's betrayal. I would redefine myself through my actions. I was ready to unleash the storm that had been brewing inside me. With my plan taking shape, I felt a rush of adrenaline every time I thought about sabotaging Leo. I had a meticulous strategy in mind, one that would ensure his performances would turn into a spectacle of embarrassment. I spent hours observing him, taking notes on his routines, the tricks he performed, and the reactions from the crowd. I needed to understand every nuance of his act if I was going to dismantle it effectively. One of the first things I noticed was that Leo had a signature trick, a seemingly impossible feat where he would juggle 3 flaming torches while balancing on a unicycle. The crowd always erupted in applause, and it was clear that this was the highlight of his performance. I knew that if I could disrupt this act, it would not only ruin his show but also make him look foolish in front of everyone. The day of my first sabotage operation arrived, and I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. I arrived at the park early, pretending to be a casual observer. I found a spot near the front of the crowd, my heart racing as I watched Leo set up his performance. He was charismatic as always, cracking jokes and engaging with the audience, but all I could focus on was the plan I had devised. As he began his routine, I felt the tension in my chest rise. When he reached the part with the flaming torches, I knew it was my moment. I had managed to procure a small device that would emit a loud noise, designed to startle him just as he was about to catch the torches. I had hidden it in the grass, discreetly positioned so that no one would notice. As Leo began his trick, I could see the anticipation in the eyes of the crowd. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling slightly as I activated the device. The sudden loud sound pierced through the air, and for a split second I felt an exhilarating rush. Leo faltered, his focus broken. As he stumbled on the unicycle, the crowd gasped, and I felt a surge of satisfaction as I watched him struggle to regain his balance. He managed to catch one of the torches, but the other 2 fell to the ground, extinguishing in a puff of smoke. Laughter erupted from the audience, and I couldn't help but smirk at the chaos I had caused. But it wasn't enough. I wanted more than just a moment of embarrassment. I wanted to destroy his confidence entirely. Over the next few weeks, I continued to execute my plan, each time refining my methods. I would set traps for him, hiding objects that would cause him to trip, misplacing his props, and even spreading rumors among the audience to create doubt about his skills. With every performance, I felt like I was gaining the upper hand. Leo's once smooth routines became plagued with mishaps. The crowd began to murmur, and I could sense a shift in their admiration. I relished the feeling of power, the way I could manipulate the situation to my advantage. The more he struggled, the more I felt my own pain lessen. But as I continued my sabotage, I also began to see the toll it took on Leo. The joy that once radiated from him began to dim. He looked exhausted and defeated, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. Was this truly what I wanted? To break a man down to the point of despair? Despite my internal conflict, I pushed those thoughts aside. My focus remained on Mia. I wanted her to see the truth about Leo, to understand that he was not the man she thought he was. I imagined the moment she would realize her mistake, the moment she would turn back to me and beg for forgiveness. One evening, after another disastrous performance for Leo, I overheard a conversation between two audience members. They were discussing how he used to be amazing but had become a laughingstock. The satisfaction I felt was bittersweet. I had succeeded in my plan, but at what cost? As I walked away from the park that night, I felt a mix of triumph and unease. I was becoming someone I never thought I would be, someone who derived pleasure from another person's suffering. It gnawed at my conscience, but the thrill of revenge kept me blinded. I needed to see it through. I needed to witness the moment it all came crashing down. In the following days, I continued my sabotage, but I also started to gather information about Mia's interactions with Leo. I wanted to know how deep their connection went, how much she was still involved with him. Each day, I felt the tension build within me, the anticipation of the confrontation that was sure to come. I was ready for the next step. I was ready to confront not just Leo, but also Mia. The time was approaching when I would expose everything, and the thrill of that moment electrified me. I had set the stage for a grand reveal, one that would shake both of their worlds to their core. The day of the confrontation finally arrived, and a sense of urgency filled the air. I had been plotting this moment for weeks, and now the time had come to unveil the truth. I felt a mix of adrenaline and dread as I prepared myself for what was sure to be a tumultuous encounter. The stage was set for a showdown, and I was determined to make it a spectacle. I had learned that Leo was scheduled to perform in the park that evening, and Mia had mentioned that she wanted to go see him. It felt like fate had aligned perfectly for my plan. I knew that if I could get her there, I could expose Leo for the fraud he was and confront Mia about her betrayal in front of everyone. The thought of it sent a thrill through me, but it was also laced with an underlying fear of how she would react. As I arrived at the park, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the trees and the crowd that had gathered. I could see Leo setting up his props, his demeanor still carrying the remnants of his earlier confidence, though it was clearly waning. The audience was buzzing with excitement, eager for the performance to begin, completely oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath the surface. I spotted Mia among the crowd, her eyes bright with anticipation. She looked beautiful and carefree, and the sight of her only fueled my anger. How could she be so happy while I was drowning in this sea of betrayal? I took a deep breath and steeled myself for what was about to unfold. As the performance began, I felt an overwhelming sense of control. I watched as Leo charmed the audience, his tricks more lackluster than before. I could sense the crowd's enthusiasm dip, and I knew it was time to act. I maneuvered through the crowd, positioning myself just in front of Mia. I could see her excitement fading as Leo stumbled through his routine, his confidence clearly shaken. Finally, I decided to make my move. I pulled out my phone and began recording the performance, knowing that Mia would see the truth for herself. As Leo began his signature juggling act, I activated the device I had planted earlier in the week, the one that would cause another distraction. It was a simple mechanism that released a loud pop, designed to startle him once again. Just as he was about to catch the torches, the noise erupted. Leo faltered, losing his balance on the unicycle. The torches fell and the crowd gasped collectively, their laughter turning to murmurs of confusion. I could see the embarrassment wash over Leo's face, and in that moment I felt a twisted satisfaction. But I wasn't done yet. As the crowd began to disperse, I stepped forward, my heart racing. "Mia," I called out, my voice cutting through the noise. She turned to me, surprise and confusion etched on her face. "We need to talk now." The crowd was still buzzing with the aftermath of Leo's mishap, but I didn't care. I pushed through the throngs of people until I reached her. "You need to see what's really going on here," I said, my voice low but firm. She looked at me, a mix of concern and irritation flashing in her eyes. "What are you talking about? Leo just had an off night, it happens." I shook my head, feeling the weight of my emotions threaten to spill over. "This isn't just about a bad performance, Mia, it's about what he's done to us." I gestured toward Leo, who was trying to regain his composure, his face flushed with embarrassment. "He's not the man you think he is. He's been playing you just like he plays the crowd." Mia's expression shifted as she began to understand the gravity of the situation. I pulled out my phone and showed her the recordings of Leo's performances, the moments of chaos I had orchestrated. "Look at him, Mia. This is who you're choosing over me. This is who you've been sneaking around with." Her eyes widened as she took in the evidence, and I could see the realization dawning on her. "You've been sabotaging him?" she asked, her voice a mix of disbelief and anger. "How could you do that? Do you really think I could just stand by and watch you throw away our life for someone like him?" I shot back, my frustration boiling over. "You've betrayed me, and now I'm exposing the truth. You need to see him for who he really is." Just then Leo approached us, his expression a mix of confusion and anger. "What's going on here?" he demanded, glancing between Mia and me. "Why are you recording my performance?" I stepped forward, my heart racing. "Because I want Mia to know the truth about you. You're a fraud, Leo. You've been playing her, and I won't let you get away with it." Mia looked torn, her eyes darting between us. "Leo, is this true?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Have you been lying to me?" Leo's face fell, and for a brief moment I saw the mask slip away. "I never meant to hurt anyone," he said, his voice low. "I care about you, Mia. I thought we had something special." The tension in the air was palpable, and I could see Mia struggling to process everything. I had exposed Leo for what he was, but now I had to face the consequences of my actions. I had put everything on the line, and I was ready for whatever fallout would come next. "Choose, Mia," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "Choose between the truth and the illusion." In that moment, I realized that I was no longer just seeking revenge. I was fighting for my marriage, for the love that we had built together. The outcome was uncertain, but I knew that I had to stand my ground and face whatever came next. The air was thick with tension as Mia stood between Leo and me, her eyes darting back and forth like a pendulum. I felt exposed, my heart racing as I braced myself for her response. It was a moment I had both anticipated and dreaded, the culmination of all my actions and emotions. I had fought so hard to reveal the truth, but now that it was laid bare, I was left wondering if it would be enough to salvage what we had. Mia took a deep breath, her expression shifting from confusion to determination. "I need time to think," she said, her voice steady but strained. With that, she turned and walked away from us, leaving me standing there with Leo, the man I had sought to destroy. I felt an overwhelming sense of loss wash over me. I had wanted to expose Leo, to confront him and reclaim my life, but now it felt like I had lost her in the process. Leo looked at me, his face a mixture of anger and pity. "You think you've won?" he asked, his voice low. "You think you've proved something?" I shook my head, feeling hollow. "This isn't about winning. It's about the truth. You've been lying to her, and she deserves to know." My anger was still there, but it was tempered by an unexpected sadness. I had sought revenge, but it felt like I had only succeeded in pushing Mia further away. Leo's expression softened for a moment. "She's not the only one who's been hurt in all of this. You think you're the only one who cares about her." His voice was laced with frustration. "I didn't plan for any of this. We connected, and it just happened. I stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. I had been so consumed by my own pain that I hadn't considered the complexities of their relationship. I had painted him as a villain in my mind, but perhaps he was just as lost as I was. It didn't excuse his actions, but it complicated the narrative I had built around our lives. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of Mia in the distance, sitting on a bench with her head in her hands. My heart ached for her, and I knew that I had to give her the space she needed, even if it felt like I was losing her for good. I walked away, leaving the park behind, unsure of what the future held. In the days that followed, I found myself in a state of limbo. Mia and I exchanged a few tense messages, but nothing felt right. I knew she was processing everything, grappling with the betrayal and the fallout. I had wanted her to see Leo for what he was, but now I was left questioning whether I had pushed her away permanently. I spent time reflecting on my actions, the motivations that had driven me to sabotage Leo and expose Mia's affair. I realized that revenge had become a double-edged sword. While I had succeeded in revealing the truth, I had also unleashed a torrent of pain that affected us all. I had been so focused on punishing Leo that I had nearly lost sight of the love I had for Mia. One evening, I decided to reach out to her again. I sent a simple message: "I'm here when you're ready to talk." I didn't know if she would respond, but I felt it was important to let her know that I was willing to listen, to understand, and to work through the mess we had created together. To my surprise, she replied the next day, asking if we could meet. My heart raced as I prepared myself for the conversation that could change everything. I arrived at a small cafe, nervously tapping my fingers on the table as I waited for her to arrive. When she walked in, I felt a rush of emotions, relief, fear, and hope all intertwined. We sat down, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Mia spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," she said, her voice trembling. "About us, about what happened. I can't deny that I made a mistake, but I also need you to understand why it happened." As she spoke, I listened intently, my heart aching for the pain we had both endured. She talked about feeling lost in our relationship, about seeking validation from someone who seemed to offer excitement and adventure. I understood her feelings, even if I didn't condone her actions. We had both neglected the bond we once shared, and it had left us vulnerable to outside influences. "I want to work through this," she continued, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't want to lose you. I know I hurt you and I'm so sorry, but I want to rebuild what we had if you're willing." I felt a mix of relief and uncertainty. The thought of rebuilding our relationship was daunting, but I also knew that I still loved her. The journey ahead would be difficult, but perhaps it was possible to emerge from this darkness stronger than before. "I want that too," I said, my voice steady. "But it will take time and effort from both of us. Trust has been broken, and we need to work on rebuilding it together." As we talked, I realized that this experience had changed me. I had confronted my demons, faced the darkness of betrayal, and emerged with a new sense of clarity. Revenge had consumed me, but now I understood that healing would require forgiveness, both for Mia and for myself. In the weeks that followed, we began to navigate the complexities of our relationship. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt and pain, but we both committed to the process. We sought counseling and opened up about our feelings, learning to communicate in ways we hadn't before. As time passed, I found myself growing alongside Mia. We began to rediscover the love that had brought us together. In the first place, the journey was long and arduous, but with each step, we rebuilt our foundation stronger than ever. Looking back, I realized that betrayal had opened my eyes to the fragility of love and the importance of communication. Though the pain of revenge had initially driven me, it was the desire for understanding and connection that ultimately guided me toward healing. In the end, I learned that love is not just about the highs, it's also about navigating the lows together. And as we moved forward, I knew that we would face whatever challenges came our way together. This experience had transformed me, and while I would always carry the scars of betrayal, I knew that I was ready to embrace the future, hand in hand with the woman I loved. The storm had passed, and now we were ready for the calm. Thank you for following my story.